If you're trying to make any kind of meaningful, effective change in your life, you've come to the right place. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lori Bischoff, and we are about to start talking some shift. On today's menu, we have a health shift, and we're going to be digging into the nitty-gritty of a ketogenic diet. I have one of my favorite guests that has been with me now a couple of times. So this is her third time with us and first time on our video on YouTube. So I'm super excited to have her back, Dr. Lori Shemek. She's going to be sharing the deets on a keto diet with us. And what's cool is she's going to be sharing a lot of information that I think people don't really know about keto. It's been pretty much the trend du jour for the last handful of years now, but there's a lot of things people don't know about how many benefits there are, and there are also a lot of misconceptions. So I'm really excited to have her on to talk about this. Let me just tell you a little bit about Lori for those of you who have not heard her on my podcast before. Dr. Lori is a well-known pioneer in creating global awareness of low-level inflammation and how it is the core cause of most illness, disease, faster aging, and weight gain. She's the author of How to Fight Fatflammation and a best-selling author of Fire Up Your Fat Burn. She's a leading health and weight loss expert and authority on inflammation and its role in weight loss, preventing disease, and optimizing health. The Huffington Post has recognized Dr. Lori as one of the top 35 diet and nutrition experts. You have likely seen her featured on or in Oprah Magazine, Redbook, Prevention, The Dr. Oz Show, NBC's The Doctors, and tons of other sources. Her latest book, The Ketogenic Key, is out now, and I am just itching to dive into it with her. So without further ado, welcome, Dr. Lori.
Thank you, Lori. That was such a nice intro. I appreciate it. It's such an honor to be here with you again. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you back. We always have really great conversations, and I love the information that you always have to share to help people with their health. We need it terribly, especially this year, in this bizarre year. So I'm grateful to have you spend some time with us. I know you're busy with the new book.
It's keeping me
And
busy.
I wanted to say congratulations before we dive in for being recognized by Global Data as being the #1 health and wellness influencer on Twitter. That is no small shakes.
Very much. Yeah, I was surprised to see that.
That's so
What a
cool.
compliment, though. I was just, it was nice. Nice surprise.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
sometimes
So
you think when you put your information out on social media, not too many are paying attention, but apparently
yeah.
there are people.
There
Somehow.
are. And your stuff that you put out is, I mean, I keep an eye on it, and there is always a lot of conversation about it. You have a lot of people that are following, that are listening to what you say, that are asking questions. So keep doing what you're doing. It's super valuable. You're making an impact for sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
They keep me interacting for sure. That is, yeah.
Yeah. So, so Dr. Lori, there are no shortage of books and videos and, information on eating a keto diet or a ketogenic diet, or as I like to say, ketocentric, whatever it is. There's just everything is out there by a lot of different experts and non-experts alike, shall we say. So what made you decide to write the Ketogenic Key with all this plethora of information?
That's a great question, because you think, why would somebody write a book on something that's just everywhere you turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the difference is my book is not just the ketogenic diet. It's about getting into ketosis, and there are, in the book, I describe 4 ways to do that. And it's really, I should have named the book Ketosis is the Key, not the Ketogenic Key, because people misconstrue what, ketogenic with ketosis, which is, of course, part of the whole imaginations of it. But there are other ways to get into ketosis. And if you don't like the ketogenic diet, you can absolutely optimize your health and weight in other ways. And so the reason I wrote the book was because every book that I've written is about reducing that low-grade inflammation in the body. The one thing that I would love your viewers to know is that keeping that type of inflammation, that really unhealthy inflammatory inflammation, if you will, down is the key to living a better quality, optimized life.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I wanted to ask. What is the difference between eating a ketogenic or a ketocentric
Mhm.
diet and actually being in ketosis? If you could explain that so everyone knows there's a difference. You could still eat ketogenic, but not ever quite get into ketosis, correct?
Right. Some people actually, even though they think they're doing the right things, are not doing the right things.
Mhm.
So, for example, they're saying, "Well, I'm eating a lot of fat and I'm eating a whole lot of protein and some carbs," but they don't realize that a true ketogenic diet is about really, um, you know it's a fine balancing act. So what you really want to do is keep your carbohydrate level 50 grams or below, ideally 25 grams daily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you keep it at 25 and below, which is nothing really, it's not, it's maybe, a quarter of a bagel. Okay. That's
Yeah.
25 grams of,
Yeah.
and, but we can go into net carbs in a little bit if you
Yep.
want. But it's important to note that if you are very overweight, getting into ketosis, which is the key again of the ketogenic diet, is maybe more challenging, and it may take you a week, it may take you 2 weeks, and so that's where the patience comes in.
Mhm.
And once you are in ketosis, what that simply means is that your body is using its own fat stores for fuel, and it's a wonderful thing to have happen. When you're using your diet, you're using dietary fat or your body's fat stores to create ketones. And these ketones, acetone, for example, or beta hydroxybutyrate, especially BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, is the magic one, because all the wonderful things you hear about keto, the ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting, for example, that is from BHB primarily.
Mhm.
And when you are doing a ketogenic diet and you're consistent with it, it is, or on and off, getting
Mhm.
on it, getting off it consistently, you are going to reap the brain health, the slower aging, the weight loss, all of the wonderful things we all want, the
Mhm.
cellular health.
Right.
This is what's so wonderful. So the average American, and you and I have talked about this before, ingests an average of 300 grams of carbohydrates a day, an
Mm.
average a day, right? So
Yeah.
that is an astounding statistic. And so when you think about somebody who's going to go from that number to 25, even
Right.
50 or 25, it's a hard leap for a lot of people to do.
Right.
So the same thing with intermittent fasting, which is another way, and I talk about in my book, and I guide the reader into doing that very effectively. But you don't want to jump into these because you'll never do it again. you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. For people that are used to having carbohydrates, especially simple carbs or refined carbs, as a normal part of a big part of their eating lifestyle, it's it's a tough transition to make.
It
And like you
really,
said, right, when you get down to
yeah,
50, 25, or like my husband, when he's really all in ketogenic, will get
right.
down to like 12. And seriously, it's like, okay, here it's in your teaspoon of cacao powder that I'm putting
Bingo.
in your
Yes.
protein smoothie,
Your
right? That's
five
it.
pecans, if
Yeah.
you're full of funds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But he loves it. The benefit is when he does that and he gets literally into ketosis, he has one of those little things that you blow into and it measures,
Right,
your
breath
level of ketosis.
analyzer, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And he's just like on fire. He's on fire and he loves it. It's just he doesn't do it nonstop month and month, after month on end,
Good,
but he
good.
goes through long phases of doing it and then he'll back off a little and then he'll go back on. And it's always just amazing. I can just literally see each day the difference in him. It's
You
phenomenal.
know, and that's, the wonderful feelings that he's getting, the optimal health benefits he's receiving from it are due to the fact that our body loves this ketones. It loves ketones because it burns energy in a clean way, right? So when you can look at it as the hybrid car analogy. So with these 300 grams of carbs a day that an average people are eating, the cells, the mitochondria, are producing energy from the food that we're taking in. This what becomes glucose then becomes a dirty form of energy. It is an easy form of energy for the body to utilize. You can get it right away, but the problem is it is unlike the electric car, right? And now, when you look at the electric car, no exhaust, no dirty gasoline exhaust like you would get with the glucose, right? So ketones burn cleaner. They're like the electric car, if you will, in terms of clean.
Yeah.
And so in terms of cellular junk and debris within the cell, there's not much of it. And so and also one thing that's very important about ketosis and the ketogenic diet is that it stops inflammation in its tracks. Okay, it stops there's the NLRP3 inflammasome that is generated when it is signaled when the ketones are produced, right? So
Hmm.
the very important inflammatory signal, but compound, but it is hard to come by. I mean, when I'm thinking of nerf 2, but NLRP3 is inhibited or blocked with the ketogenic diet, essentially.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So I want to come back around for a minute to BHB.
yeah,
Um, because there are a lot of supplements like BHB supplements that you can buy.
right.
Now, is taking that supplement going to have the same effect as if that's happening naturally as a product of, your ketogenic diet and being in ketosis and that's happening? Is it the same or is it different?
Absolutely, it's the same.
Okay.
And one of the wonderful things, and that's one of the options here's my book that I talk about in my book, The Ketogenic Key,
Yay.
is the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, exercise produces ketosis, and supplements, the exogenous ketone supplements. It's generally a drink that people take, and it gets you into ketosis under half an hour, where a lot of people have to wait, as I mentioned early on, 2 weeks, or longer.
Okay.
It happens right away, and it helps you lose weight. It's an excellent appetite control.
Okay.
And
So
so,
there's no downside to taking the supplement.
no, none.
Okay.
If you do the ketogenic diet, you don't really need them, but they're excellent in terms of giving you more better athletic performance, which
Okay.
is great. If you find yourself hungry, which most people never are on a ketogenic diet,
Hmm. Hmm.
it helps with keeping your appetite completely away. And brain health, they've given Alzheimer's patients, for example, the exogenous ketones, and they fare very well. Their symptoms are markedly improved. Now, it
Hmm.
doesn't cure obviously Alzheimer's, but it really does. The brain loves ketones, and so that's why they do so well on it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it is amazing how still, with all of the information that's out there, still you can jump online and you can see people promoting carbohydrates and saying that that is great. That's your brain fuel,
Oh,
that you need that. I mean,
yeah.
literally a week ago, Lori, I was reading something and it was somebody with some sort of nutrition credential and
Mhm.
responding to somebody. And it was like, she was adamant about saying, oh, all this stuff about carbs being bad, and no, that's wrong, and your brain needs those carbs to live and to thrive. And I was like, oh my God, this is antiquated information and it's
Antiquated.
still being pushed out there.
Right. And so they're changing the food guidelines right now. They're in the process of doing that, and the powers that be are rejecting all of that. You know, randomized control trials on this on lower carb eating. They haven't completely rejected it yet, but it's interesting that how researchers, scientists, physicians, they can become entrenched in the old dogma, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. A good example of that is saturated fat, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
you hear physicians and cardiologists saying, oh, yeah, you do. You need some saturated fat for hormone growth, for brain health, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it takes time. That's the problem with research takes time, especially nutritional research is
Mm-hmm.
very challenging.
Right.
Uh, especially, yeah.
Yeah, people can. I always say, you know what? Rather than sitting around waiting for research to catch up, because right now you are in the condition you're in, and if you're not, experiencing great
Yeah,
health, if you're experiencing issues, if you've got inflammation, if you've got weight gain that you can't get rid of, you know what? Don't wait for new research. Be your own scientist.
right,
Do your own thing, and just try some of these things. Really, I mean, what is the downside of cutting out most of your carbs? If you're going to
right,
allow a few in, make sure that they're complex, healthy carbs, but then
right,
just focus on some good, healthy fats and fruits and vegetables and protein, and just see how you feel. What's the worst that could happen?
right. And my clients I have them have their blood tested, and their metabolic markers improve markedly, powerfully. It's so wonderful to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So their fasting insulin goes way down, their triglycerides go way down, their fasting glucose everything that you want.
Right.
Or CRP, which is a test of inflammation, is way down. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I see it firsthand every day, what's going
Yeah.
on, and
Yeah.
I really,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And right, it's the proof is in, the client's results. And I have a client that I've only been working with for a couple months, and
Mhm.
weeks ago he sent me a text and he said, I'm now off 3 of my 5 medications that
Isn't that
he was on.
wonderful?
Right, that he was on just like literally 7 weeks earlier. And my thing was, I just want to help you tweak your diet. I'm not a doctor, so you and your doctor and your meds, that's between you and your doctor. So that wasn't obviously my focus. It's outside of my scope of practice, but I can help you with your diet, and then we'll see what happens. And you know what? And there you go. Just clean up your eating
So,
and try
uh,
it.
yeah, a good example is Virta Health. Okay, Virta Health has produced quality randomized controlled trials using the ketogenic diet to get most of their patients to reverse their type 2 diabetes and to get
Hmm.
most of them at least off of their medications, and it's or cut them in half, right? Cut the amount of
Yeah.
insulin they're taking in half. And so here you have research that people I think what happens is when the ketogenic diet first came out, it became like a buzzword, and you
Hmm.
saw a lot of people that were not credible promoting it, and it has become unfortunately, to find the right sources and the credible sources, you have to
Yeah.
wade through a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so, but Virta Health, if anyone's interested in reversing their diabetes, check them out, use the
Mm.
ketogenic diet. If you have type 2 diabetes, it's fantastic. I mean, you're optimizing every aspect of your health, including your cellular health, which we can talk about too.
Okay. Yeah. We should put that link, Verta, Verta.
VIRTA Health.
Okay. We'll make sure to include that. Excellent. So let's take a minute to explain what makes keto different than some of the other diets out there, like the Atkins that was around for so long. How is it different from Atkins, paleo, Whole 30, or even just a low carb diet? Explain a little bit about the difference.
Right. So with the Atkins diet, it was a high protein diet, right? And so now I want to make a caveat here. The ketogenic diet is a moderate protein, and that's where a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, it's like an Atkins diet, and it is not. It's far that nothing could be farther from the truth, right?
Yeah.
However, here's the caveat. If you are, say, a woman or a man in your 40s, you have belly fat, you have stubborn fat that you can't get rid of, then with a slower metabolism, then adding in more protein is going to be powerful for you, okay? So adding in more protein than the typical ketogenic diet works beautifully. So that's the difference with the Atkins diet in most cases. And then the paleo diet is about not using grains, okay? They want you to stay away from grains. And so that's similar to the ketogenic diet because your chances are you're not going to be eating that many grains,
Right,
with
right.
15 carbs or 25 or 50 grams of carbs, right?
Yeah.
There's not much to eat. So
Yeah.
grains and beans, legumes, and things like that, the paleo diet stays away from. However, it's higher in carbohydrates. It's not really, it's a lower carb diet than what the standard American diet is. But it is still not a low carb diet.
So where are the carbs coming from if they're not coming from grains? Is it like fruit or
Starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes, root
potatoes? Okay.
vegetables,
Yeah.
tubers, those kinds of things. Now they'll eat them if they soak the legumes, right? They will soak them and ingest them that way. So they could, conceivably increase their carb count that way as well.
Right.
But yeah, so those are examples of the difference between the ketogenic diet. Really what one needs to remember is that the ketogenic diet is a very low carb diet. It's moderate protein and high in fat, okay?
Yeah.
Healthy fats.
Healthy
And so
fats.
right. And that's like avocados, olive oil,
Yeah. Nuts and seeds.
coconut oil, right? The
Right.
nuts and seeds, egg yolks, things like that.
Yeah.
And meat, you can have, for example, 2 eggs and some bacon for breakfast, or 2 eggs and a ham slice, but no English muffin.
Right. No toast and English muffin and
Right.
croissants.
Right. Although
Right.
there are a few companies that are coming out with keto bread made with almond flour and very low in carbs. Still, you must look at those carbohydrates there, though, because this is very important because they're calling everything keto in the grocery store. And it isn't. I look at it all, right? I see it all. I read labels, which I encourage every person watching to do that. You must read labels in order to optimize your health and weight. Having said that, though, they're putting keto on everything. And a lot of it's just junk. Cauliflower, remember cauliflower was the rage. It's a keto food when it's used properly. But they're making, say, cauliflower frozen pizza, and it has 54 grams of carbohydrates for one serving.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's mixed with wheat flour. So they're just calling it cauliflower pizza.
Right. No, and you're so right. You have to train yourself to turn the box around and read the ingredient list and read the nutritional panel, because you're right. And even things, I have recipes that I make with almond flour, but almond flour has carbs in it too. So you can't just assume that that's okay because it's gluten-free and keto friendly.
That's a good point, Lori, because a lot of people can gain weight on the ketogenic diet because they think, oh, I can eat nuts. Do you mean I can have nuts and I can have avocados? Right?
Right.
Let me just pour some olive oil in my pan. And it really is, it's a really easy way to gain weight because the body will then store excess fat as fat. Unless
Mm-hmm.
you have, there's a certain type of fat called MCT oil,
Mm-hmm.
medium chain triglyceride oil that you can buy as a supplement. And a lot of people put it, say, in their bulletproof coffee or their smoothies or whatever. And this oil, one of the wonderful things about it is that it's anti-inflammatory. It is metabolized in the liver immediately, and which helps with liver health, helps reduce triglycerides, and also is utilized as energy in the same way carbohydrates are utilized, the glucose from the carbohydrates, right away for energy.
Right away.
So the chances of it being stored as fat are very low.
Yeah.
So it's a really healthy fat to have on hand, but
Yeah.
don't eat it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're new to using MCT oil, just a little mention there, start out small because
Right.
if you,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a teaspoon, right? And then
Yeah.
gradually increase.
Because it can cause digestive upset, if you know what we're talking about.
Yes,
So if you
upset.
take too much at first. Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about the potential healing benefits of keto on some things that maybe most people aren't aware of. Like earlier, you mentioned how it can be helpful with Alzheimer's, not a cure, but slowing it down and helping with brain activity. I
Yeah.
know in your book, you mentioned things like people with migraines, cancer, autism. There's a whole a slew of things. So maybe just touch a little bit on that, some of the more common things like that.
Yes. The neurological benefits of using ketones to upgrade your brain health are fantastic. You know, we found out about keto, the ketogenic diet, for people who had epilepsy. They realized that when they put them on a very low carb diet, very as it stands now, the 25 grams of carbs, and they gave them a high fat diet and moderate protein, that their seizures either vanished or were markedly reduced, right?
Amazing.
And so it went away because medications came on board, and people said, well, my child, likes to eat carbs, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All those things. And so they decided to instead give their child the medication, which I understand. If you're a parent and you want to you're running a household, right? It's challenging to do
Sure.
everything. But that's why the ketogenic diet went away, primarily because of the medications that came on the market. And so what happens, they believe, is that now in my book, it's based on excellent research. I mean, it is all excellent research. And every piece of research, there's a description of each piece of research that's used in the books.
Right.
It's 50 pages of descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
If one is geeky and wants to read about that, right?
Yeah.
But, so essentially what's happening with all of the neurological diseases that you mentioned is you're inhibiting that inflammasome, that inflammatory molecule from doing its dirty work, okay, that the ketogenic diet is. So your brain is then better optimized on a ketogenic diet with high healthy fat. The brain loves fat. The brain loves cholesterol, it loves saturated fat. And, and a lot of people are afraid of eating, they think it's a high protein diet when in fact, as I mentioned, it's a moderate protein. But that question comes up over and over again. Well, what about the saturated fat? And my response is always that it's very good for you, that it's a long, complex story that began with the name Ansel Keys. And it took decades and decades until now, recently, for people to understand that saturated fat in and of itself is a good thing, okay? It's what people are eating along with the saturated fat in their diet. So they're eating these refined, processed, inflammatory foods. This oxidizes LDL cholesterol, right? And this is that dirty cholesterol, unfortunately, that is causing heart disease. And so it isn't saturated fat It is not cholesterol. It's that analogy of, you see a fireman at the scene of a fire, and you might be quick to judge that that fireman started the fire because he's at the scene of the fire, right?
Yeah.
And so, but now they know, people are starting to get it. Now there is a condition called familial hypercholesterolemia, and it's a long word which simply means you have a genetic condition for high cholesterol. It
Okay.
afflicts maybe 10% of our population.
Hmm.
And so, but they know they have it. If they've
Yeah.
had a, a test, a cholesterol test, it's skyrocketed. You know, it's not like a normal high test. It's beyond high, and your
Mm-hmm.
doctor.
Okay. All right. So, and I was surprised though about, or interested, I guess, in the migraines. People,
Yeah, is
I
that
know
great
people that,
news?
yeah, people that suffer from
Yeah.
migraines, and how MSG, that wicked thing that's still lurking about
Yes.
in much of our food, is oftentimes a culprit. And just by being aware of that, and changing and eating a ketogenic diet, you can probably go a long way to eliminating those.
Yeah, and we talk about that in the book. It's a chapter on
Yeah.
migraines, and it is something that, we all know somebody who has migraine issues, right?
Hmm.
And the ketogenic diet helps reduce the severity of them. It helps reduce the number of them. Some people have never got them again. So it does help. It's very beneficial. When you add ketones, into your via, from your food, from the way how you eat. It's how you eat and when you eat that matters most, really. But
Right.
exogenous ketones are beneficial. Exercise, again, is another way. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you say when you eat, I know that for me, I just kind of naturally, because it just feels good. It feels the way my body likes to eat. I normally just daily do, it just turns out to be like a 14 to 15 to 16-hour fast, just
Mhm.
because that's just the way my body naturally likes to eat. So
Right.
explain to people about intermittent fasting. It's really quite easy, and
Mhm.
and the timing, of when you're eating, and how that plays into, really boosting your ketogenic diet.
Yeah, that's intermittent fasting. For those that don't know, is just a period of time when you're not eating. So when you go to sleep at night, say you sleep 8 hours, you go into a state of ketosis naturally. All right. And all that you're doing, essentially, if you do it in this type of application, is that you're extending your sleep, your fasting time. So if it's 8 hours, say your last meal was at 7 at night, your next meal is at 7 in the morning. That's 12 hours of fasting right there.
Right.
And it's not so hard. We've all done the 12-hour, fasting before a blood test, or we've waited to have breakfast, to have lunch with our friends. That's fasting too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's really a mindset issue
Yeah.
more than it is a hunger issue, because I promise you, you are not starving. You will
Right.
not starve, no matter, you can go for even 24 hours or more and not starve. Okay. It's not, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, what happens is the body is on a circadian rhythm, and everything, in fact, in our body runs on that rhythm. And so you will find that once you start, like you, Lori,
Mm-hmm.
you say you do 14 hours. At the 14-hour mark, that's when your stomach starts growling again. That's when
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, time to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who get up and eat right away, that's when you're hungry too, for those that eat breakfast. But suffice it to say, you're entering ketosis, and you're doing a lot of wonderful things. Now, the longer you go, the longer you fast, the deeper ketosis you get into. And what happens is um, a byproduct of ketosis is called autophagy, or intermittent fasting is what is causing this autophagy.
Mm-hmm.
And so simply cellular house cleaning is what's going on. And the cells, when they're metabolizing energy, and there's a lot of junk and gunk that gets caught up inside the cell. And because we are eating 24/7, we have access to food. There's never been any time in history where we've had so much access to food and bad food, right? So
Right.
again, remember that dirty glucose, gasoline exhaust analogy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's going on. So the cell has a lot of debris in it, has a lot of junk and gunk. And so the cell's like, oh, I'm not having to metabolize any nutrients. So what I'll do is I'll clean up the cell and reuse a lot of the parts, remodel them, and make brand new parts for the cell, the
Mm,
liposomes. And,
okay.
and also what's really important is the cell membrane is also optimized, the health of it. And that, I have to say, is as important as the little organelles inside the cell, like the
Okay.
mitochondria. The health of your membrane, your cell membrane, is crucial, because if you're eating a diet that's full of sugar, for example, that cell membrane's rather stiff, right? All the nutrients that you want can't get into that cell hardly, very easily, right?
Mhm.
And so, also what's happening if you're eating a terrible diet, the mitochondria are being affected. Sugar, in fact, refined white flour, damage mitochondria. And those are those tiny little organelles that literally keep us alive because they're providing energy for us to stay alive.
Mhm.
And you've seen older people, as they get older, they become frail.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason they're losing their mitochondria. They have also have mitochondria that are not healthy. So
Mhm.
the goal, if you want to live a healthy life, a, one that keeps
Long.
you independent and on
Mhm.
top of your game throughout your life,
Right.
is to increase the mitochondria in your cell, the number of them. It's called biogenesis, mitochondrial biogenesis, and also the health of them. And intermittent fasting, or ketosis, will do that very, very well, as will the
Mhm.
ketogenic diet.
Beautiful. So let me ask you, is keto good for kids?
Keto is fine for children. Yeah, it is fine for children. But see, they're growing, so they need more protein. They need. I would give them more carbohydrates. We don't want to grow. We don't want to put on. We don't want to ingest too much protein, because then this triggers mTOR excessively, and mTOR can be a problem for some, but not others, in terms of promoting cancer and other conditions.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I would, with children, I would treat it with kid gloves,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay. Um, what was I going to ask you? I know what I want to know before I forget and move on to the smartest way for people to start.
Mhm.
I do want to ask about certain types of fat, especially saturated fat. So, is there a limit to some of the tastier things that people really enjoy, like cheese and, like you said, bacon? There's a lot of that's an easy, quick go to when you're hungry, and you can justify it because it's fat and it's ketogenic friendly. But can you do too much of those types of fat? Should you be balancing a little bit of what is the balance, I should say, between fats from like avocados and nuts and seeds and healthy oils, plant oils, versus saturated fats or animal fats?
Yeah, you want about 70 to 80% fat in your diet, right?
Mm.
And so this is where people run into trouble, because they're like, oh, okay, I can just have, nuts whenever I want. Or again, the cheese is another example.
Yeah.
Um, you see these wonderful keto recipes out
Hmm.
there, and they're just calorie bombs. Calories really don't matter, but they do. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're eating a really healthy whole foods diet, your keto diet, lower in carbs, you're fine on the calories, right? But yes, you can overdo it. All of those those keto desserts and those keto cookies you can see at the grocery store, all of that is just adding weight on you, believe me. And
Right.
you want to be really smart about what you eat. If you do it right and you choose healthy foods, you would not need to, you won't gain weight and you won't
Okay.
be hungry. But cheese, yes, you can use cheese,
Mhm.
as you would,
Are
yeah.
there some cheeses that are better than others or
Well,
worse?
yes, in terms of my research, aged cheese is excellent for gut health.
Okay.
It is. It provides beneficial probiotics, and it goes a long way. So if you like aged cheeses like Camembert Brie or blue cheese, maybe the Camembert or the Brie won't go won't go as long as the blue cheese, but yeah, those are excellent sources of cheese to use, and
Okay.
they're lower in carbs too than the other cheeses.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good. Because I love blue cheese on my salad. So that
Yeah, it's a
that's
great choice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to make sure because we're cheese lovers. I don't know
Oh,
anyone that
yeah,
doesn't love cheese, right? And
all right.
um,
And so
right,
I eat cheese almost every day. I'm not
yeah.
sensitive to dairy, and if you are sensitive, you'll know it, but you'll have bloating and,
Mhm. Right.
just or all sorts of digestive issues.
And so I would say then, or would you say, watch out for processed cheese because that's not quite the same, right? If
Oh,
you're getting a
yeah.
processed cheese,
Mhm.
that's got some garbage oils in it, right?
Yes, it does. That's it. Yeah, we need to talk about that too. That's really important. Yeah, recently, I believe a major brand. I can't name the name here, but a major brand was told that they need to take the word cheese off of their processed cheese. So now it's just called I can't remember what they called it, but it's
Or
like
orange spread.
slices, or I can't remember, but they cannot say the word cheese because it was not cheese at all. There's nothing in there that indicates that it's cheese. But to the oils, right? The oils that Lori is talking about are important to know. If you do one thing, if you cut out junk food out of your diet, ultra processed foods like that, the snack foods, the cakes, the cookies, the things like that. Almost every single manufactured processed food product out there uses these oils, and that these oils are soybean oil, vegetable oil,
Okay.
canola oil, or vegetable oil. These oils, remember that cell membrane, how important that is? Well, that
Yes.
cell membrane stores the type of oils or fats that you're ingesting. So again, it's making your cell membrane inflammatory. When you have an inflammatory cellular membrane, then the signals, the leptin, the let's just call them the weight loss signals, the fat burn um, um, signals are not getting to the cell. And so we have a problem, right? We have inflammation going on in the body. And so these cells are not, these oils are not healthy for you at all.
Right.
They're inflammatory, highly processed. People think that canola oil is this godsend, and it's one of the worst
Yeah.
offenders out there. Yeah.
Yeah. That stuff is horrible. It's horrible. And you see a lot of canola oil, along with the others that you mentioned, in a lot of the products that are um, like vegan cheese or
Right.
like the Beyond Meat,
Oh,
if you don't want to eat meat.
oh, yeah.
And I've looked at some of the ingredient, I turn it over, I read the label and canola, there it is. And
Yeah.
it's just,
And everything.
Mm, yeah,
It's
it's
terrible.
horrible. So I think, people think that they're doing something good for themselves if they don't eat meat. So they're looking for,
Right.
you know, things that to substitute, and they think they're getting something really good. And in fact, they're just not getting the meat or the animal product, but in place of it, they're getting the garbage oils.
And these garbage oils are creating garbage gene expression, negative health, negative, unhealthy gene expression.
Right.
So, if you take anything away from this show, stop ingesting those oils because it's a cascade of inflammation that's going to be happening within the body if you keep eating these foods on a daily basis. Once in
Yeah.
a while is fine.
Right.
The body can repair and handle that kind of, it is cellular damage, by the way. A lot of people think that nothing, I have inflammation, but what's happening is it is damaging the tissues in the body. Even this, as I mentioned, the cell membrane is a tissue in the body, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so that's an important point to remember. And also, it's good to get in your omega-3s, because things like, for example, turmeric or curcumin can really tamp down on the effects of inflammation, really mitigate it very
Mm-hmm.
powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the omega-3s, the DHA and the EPA, that resolve that inflammation. That is the key to optimizing our health.
Yeah, good point. And I think, you can't really stress that enough. I'm glad you came back around to that, because I think a lot of people, especially if you're still fairly young, maybe you're in your
Mhm.
30s or in your 40s and you're still feeling okay. You don't have any major conditions, and you feel like, well, I don't feel any aches or pains, so I don't think I have any inflammation. But when all of this damage is being done over the course of years at the cellular level, you don't know that what's brewing in there
Right.
until all of a sudden
The
find
body
out,
can't keep
bam.
up. Yeah, the
Yeah,
body can't repair the damage, can't keep up with it. It's an accumulation, right? And
right.
so the body's always trying to put a band-aid, trying to fix things, and
Yeah.
it wants to maintain homeostasis, cellular homeostasis, but it can't do it anymore. And that's why
Yeah.
people age. And aging is inflammatory. So when we use intermittent fasting, like I talk about in my book, um, it it actually not it optimizes cellular health, the mitochondrial health, as I mentioned, but also gets rid of those senescent cells that a lot of people don't know about, which are these dead, almost dead cells. They call them zombie cells because
Mm.
they're kind of like half alive, but they're
Yeah.
sending out a lot of distress signals,
Right.
false distress signals, to the other cells in the body. And this causes marked inflammation in the body. But science is right now working on getting rid of these senescent
Yes.
cells, which is
Yes.
fantastic, because this is a huge marker of aging. And
Right.
once we get rid of that, knee pain will be gone, backaches,
Right. Yeah.
osteoporosis, you name it.
It's very exciting what's happening there. I'm in the middle of reading David Sinclair's latest book.
Oh
God,
yeah, I forgot to.
Lifespan.
Right.
Lifespan, and it's very scientific-y. So I'm like, okay, I'm picking up the messages. I'm picking up most of it, but it's so science-y that some of it is just kind of like going,
Okay.
in
He's a
one ear and out the other.
researcher.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. So it's right,
he-
but I am getting I'm getting the gist of it, and
yeah.
the exciting advances they're making, understanding that aging is not natural, aging is a
Right.
disease, and the work they're doing at the cellular level, like you are talking about, is phenomenal. It's very exciting to see what's
It's
coming up
exciting.
for us.
We live in a time that is very exciting. And when shows like yours and the research that's being out there, so people have an option, they have choices. And that's why I do what I do, to offer choice to people
Hmm.
on how to fix their health, how to really live a better quality of life. And
Yeah.
so David Sinclair is fantastic. He's really great.
Oh,
Yeah,
he is.
doing a
I
lot
love
of
his.
work.
I love it.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, let me ask you, let's talk about, for a minute, let's touch on just a couple of the most common myths and misperceptions about the keto diet.
Well, one big one is that, as I mentioned earlier, it's a high protein diet. People think
Okay.
it's high protein, and it is not. It is, moderate protein. Now, again, if you have a lot of belly fat to lose and you're in, say a female in your mid 40s on up, I would say, or in your 40s on up, I would say add in more protein, because protein, you're going to really, the muscles really utilize protein very effectively. And the more muscle you have, here we go back to aging again, the bigger depositories for glucose. The less glucose you have circulating in your system, the healthier you are. And so that's one of the reasons the ketogenic diet works so beautifully, is because there is no sugar in the diet. It's wonderful about that. So yeah, so high protein is one of the myths. The other myth is that it's going to cause ketoacidosis, which will not happen. That's a huge myth. No, if you're in that situation, it is not from the ketogenic diet. So don't be afraid of, people hear the word ketosis and they think ketoacidosis. And that's totally different. Ketosis,
Yeah.
is,
So for people that don't know what ketoacidosis is, real quick, would you explain that?
Yeah, it's when your ketone level gets, so if you're measuring your ketones, it's 10 millimoles or higher, right? So on a ketogenic diet, you want your millimoles to be measuring in any form, such as a breath analyzer, urine strips, blood tests. You want it 0.5 to 3 millimoles or on up, right? But you will never get to the 10. Okay, so it's impossible for somebody for that to happen.
Okay, so for someone that has been pretty much living a lifestyle of the standard American diet, the SAD diet, and they are like, okay, I'm going to give this a try.
Right.
In order for them to really set themselves up for success, what is the best way for them to start so that they don't get freaked out and cut and run after day 2?
Right. So what I would do is I would just begin to reduce and I talk about this in the book, is to reduce your carbohydrate intake slowly, because what you're doing is you're teaching your body to become less of a sugar burner and more of a fat burner. So when there's less sugar, which is glucose, most everything metabolizes to glucose in the body, there's less of that circulating in your system, and the cells are like, oh, okay, and if you exercise, you're using up that glucose, right? So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to do intermittent fasting and to slowly ease into that. I like for people to start with intermittent fasting and then move on to the ketogenic diet, because when you are fasting, say 12 hours, you are literally using your fat for fuel, right? And your glucose level is flat, your insulin level is flat. And again, all those cellular happenings, those wonderful cellular, just those wonderful cellular benefits are happening. And so everything is good for you when you're doing the intermittent fasting. But as you extend it, as we talked about earlier, it becomes a lot easier for you to do it. And then, once you can do 12 hours of intermittent fasting, which is really nothing, it's very easy to do, you can do the ketogenic diet.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. And I think just reminding people too that all of the those refined carbohydrates and the sugar, all of that readily available fuel that, you think that even if you cut back on your calories, but your calories are still coming from those refined carbs and sugar, right? That's the fuel that your body's going to burn, which means it's not going to dig into the stored fat.
Right.
And I
It
think
never
that,
will.
yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. So when you stop giving your body all of this glucose from all of these carbohydrates, and especially unhealthy ones, it will never reach for those fat stores.
Yeah.
and there you go. You can't lose weight. That's why you have that tummy or whatever,
Right.
not
Right.
giving
Because
the body a chance.
yeah, yeah, there's still the school of thought out there that, it's a numbers game, calories
Yeah,
in, calories out. But still
that's
people
not
have to
true. Yeah.
understand that those calories have a value, and there's quality calories and non-quality calories. So yeah, I think
And they have a
reminding
different effect upon the body. They
right.
each type of food affects the body differently.
Yeah.
So again, like you mentioned, the refined, say, sugar
Mhm.
is immediately metabolized into glucose, and that spikes your blood sugar. Then it drops, and that action right there is inflammation, right? And how many people eat a little sugar? Rarely, not many. So
Mhm.
most people are addicted to sugar. The average American ingests 156 pounds of sugar a day, and I mean a year, and that's another astounding statistic,
Mhm.
and you think one out of every two people in our country has pre-diabetes, and it doesn't stop at pre-diabetes, right? It continues down the road to type 2 diabetes. So what,
Right.
that's another horrible statistic,
What
but
yeah.
reflective of the standard American diet and the type of choices people are making.
Right, right. Good information. Okay, so before I let you go, let's remind everyone of where they can find out more about you and your amazing books, the Ketogenic Key and the others, and all of your services, Lori.
Thank you so much. Yes, you can find me at drlorishemek.com. That's Dr. Lori, Lori, Shemek.com. And I'm on Twitter as Lori Shemek. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Dr. Lori Shemek. And you can find all four of my books on Amazon. So.
Yes, and your podcast too.
Oh, yes. And thank you for reminding me. And I have a podcast.
Yes.
I love it. It is so much fun. And it's called This Podcast Burns Fat. And we have a lot of wonderful guests on there.
Yeah, so check that out.
Yeah.
Full of amazing information so that you
Mhm.
guys can start to up level your health, and seriously, one day at a time, with just making even incremental changes like what Dr. Lori's been talking about. You you will notice, and you'll notice in a short
Yeah.
period of time if you stay consistent and just keep your momentum going, right, Lori?
Right. Yeah, we didn't even touch on gut health. And that's like the epicenter.
Right. Okay, so tee that up for next time.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I am just delighted that you are willing to keep coming back. You
Oh, I
always
love
have
it.
the
I love
best
you.
info.
So of course I would.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good. So we will for sure put that on ice for our next episode is gut health. I know it doesn't sound sexy, everybody, but trust me, if your gut is healthier, you will feel more sexy. So
Yes,
there's that, right?
there's that.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Lori.
you, Lori.
Everyone, make sure that you check out Dr. Lori's site and everything that she has to offer. And if you find value in everything we talk about on We're Talking Shift, please take a minute to give us a rating, tell us some comments, tell us what you love about it, your takeaways. We want to hear it all. To find out more about coaching with me, head on over to loribischoff.com. And until next week, stay feisty, my friends, stay healthy, and go make some epic shift happen in your lives. You too, Gary Vee.